Hello all good people. Probably many of you are familiar with the situation when you want to lose weight. You begin to restrict yourself in nutrition and strive to do more various physical exercises, but nothing works out for you. And you suddenly remember that when you were young, it wasn't at all difficult for you to get yourself back in shape with any deviations. Well, for example, a few extra kilograms were quite calmly removed under some kind of dietary restrictions. And literally, after a few workouts, you entered your ideal shape. What's wrong with you, provided that you don't have any thyroid disease, you don't have type 2 diabetes or other conditions that are usually associated with fat accumulation? And besides, I want to tell you that there is no such condition that with age a person's metabolism worsens, and everything could be attributed to this. Or rather, from 20 to 60 years, don't consider a change in metabolism as the culprit of the fact that you cannot lose weight. The fact is that I have already released a video where clearly I talk about a study that proved that there is no difference between the basic metabolic rate in people 20 years of age and 60 years of age, regardless of gender. This is not some speculative reasoning of mine, but a scientific fact. Physiology, fundamental science. And if so, if our general metabolism doesn't change, then why is it really much more difficult for us to lose the gained kilograms? The thing is that we need to understand how we burn fat. Fat is burned in our mitochondria. Well, of course, in order for fat burning to occur, first of all, it is necessary to establish a negative energy balance. Well, for this you just need to eat less, as many understand, and do more physical activity. But there are situations when a person suddenly begins to lose muscle instead of fat with an energy deficit. This too shouldn't suit us. There are situations when a person has a fairly well-developed skeletal muscle, and it seems that he spends a large amount of energy in training, but his fat reserves remain unchanged. Again, it's all about the mitochondria. Mitochondria are small intracellular organelles that process fat, and fatty acids are oxidized there. And as a result of this, there is an accumulation of a chemical compound called acetyl coenzyme A, which then already enters into numerous chemical reactions that our body needs to generate energy. And accordingly, the more mitochondria a person has, both the number and the function of the mitochondria themselves, the more intensive fat-burning processes will occur. But the trouble is, the older a person becomes, even a healthy person, the less mitochondria in his muscles. Unfortunately, this is one of the signs of aging, and the fundamental sign of aging is the deterioration of mitochondrial function. And of course, there is scientific evidence for this. In the description after this video, there will be a link to a study that examines biopsies, that is, pieces of muscle under a microscope, in young people and in older people who are equally healthy and engaged in physical activity. And in young people, the number of mitochondria in the muscles is much larger. Why do we need mitochondria? What is their overall effect on humans? First, let's look at an example. Let's take two cars, a small mini car and a large sports car. And it is clear that a sports car with a large engine will eat much more gasoline than a small car. And it will do it with less effort. That is, there one pressed the gas pedal a little bit, and the speed rose significantly as already 100 kilometers per hour. But in this small car, you have to push with all your might in order to accelerate it to some decent speed. That is, less fuel is eaten there, of course, in a small car, but this engine works subjectively more heavily. Similarly, we have the situation with mitochondria. And when you are young, it's enough for you to go to some kind of training, and it will not even seem to you that you are doing something heavy. You have so many mitochondria that you can run fast, do some exercises and not feel tired at all. And at this time your body will do a great job, and the work, its implementation, as you know, requires energy. And thus you spend more energy per unit of time with more mitochondria. Moreover, subjectively, it's absolutely comfortable for you. Conversely, the older you get, the fewer mitochondria, the more you suffer at the same amount of training compared to younger people. You will experience greater fatigue and energy will be spent, of course, less. Therefore, it's clear, in order for us to improve fat burning, we need mitochondria. Of course, we also need muscle mass, because muscle mass does work, and it just participates in energy balance. But don't confuse the energy balance here. This is a separate issue, and in any case, mitochondria are exclusively involved in fat burning. Now we come to how we can establish this process of increasing the number of mitochondria. We need to do two things. Improve mitochondrial function. That is, inside these structures there are enzymes that ensure the rate of the reaction of the transition of fat to ATP. This, by the way, is called beta-oxidation of fatty acids. Well, now let's move on to the main thing. How can we improve the quality and quantity of mitochondria? Two approaches are needed here. First, you need to understand that the process is long. It won't happen tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. This will take several months. 3 to 4 months at a minimum is necessary for your mitochondria to start working better and for their number to begin to increase. And at the same time, the older you are, the process, of course, unfortunately goes slowly. However, be patient and you will be rewarded for it. So what should we do to improve the quality of mitochondria? This is to perform cardio loads every day. That is, to be engaged in some kind of physical exercise that is equivalent in terms of energy expenditure to walking 10 kilometers at a speed of 5 kilometers per hour. Well, for example, you can swim, you can ride a bike, can play tennis, go to the gym, and so on, and accordingly perform such loads. But this is the base load. And from these basic loads, you need to gain from 90 to 100 minutes of cardio loads on the second pulse zone during the week. What does a second pulse zone mean? In fact, the pulse is not necessary here to focus. It can be different for people depending on their level of fitness. It is necessary to focus on your subjective feelings. If you can keep up a conversation with the interlocutor while running or brisk walking or riding a bicycle, but so that the interlocutor feels that you have some kind of breathing difficulties, this is the second zone. Its upper limit is as soon as you start to work out more intensively, you immediately get out of breath. You need to catch that feeling and you need to train on it. Again, 90 to 150 minutes a week is the bare minimum for health. In fact, many people exercise a lot more because they enjoy it. It's not about health, it's a hobby. Well, in addition to such relatively calm cardio loads, you need to devote approximately 10% of this time out of 90 to 150 minutes, that is, from 9 to 15 minutes a week of pure time, to devote to high-intensity interval training. What does high-intensity interval training mean? This means that for a short period of time, for example when running, you raise your heart rate to maximum values. That is, it feels like you are running a little bit slower than a sprint distance. Let's say for 1 to 4 minutes, and then you start to rest. Run for about 4 minutes, and then rest for about 4 to 6 minutes, and do several such intervals during training. I'm just talking here as an example, because for each specific person, you need to undergo an examination before starting real training. This thing is pretty heavy. I'm just talking about the principles here, and I recommend that those people who start doing cardio training in earnest get an examination with a doctor before that in order not to get into a bad situation. So it's high-intensity interval training, which again takes from 10 to 20% of the total training time per week. They increase the number of mitochondria. Now let's summarize this protocol for increasing mitochondria. Point 1. We need to perform some kind of load every day, which is equivalent to 10 kilometers of calm walking. Point 2. We need from 90 to 150 minutes per week of training in the second pulse zone. And thirdly, we need from this 90 to 150 minutes per week, 10 to 20% of high-intensity interval training. This 10 to 20% includes exactly the pure time of work at a high pulse. These rest periods are not included. For example, here is my case of interval training. This is an uphill ride. Here I do 13 pieces of climbing with a climb of more than 600 meters per hour. And accordingly, you see the pulse rises, falls, rises, falls. That's interval training for you. And thus, if you keep this protocol for 6 months, you are guaranteed to increase the number of mitochondria, and you will not have difficulty burning some excess fat. Of course, this is one of the aspects of keeping yourself in optimal shape. But this is one of the main features that a person needs in order for his body to be programmed and tuned for normal metabolism and fat burning. On this, thank you all for your attention.